All right, if you are new with us or you missed last week, we are in week 2 of our series, Strapped. And you can actually get online and you can see all the messages that we teach here at Friendship Church. You can go to our website, experiencefriendship.com. You can go to our YouTube page. We actually do have a YouTube page. It's also on Facebook. We usually post it on Mondays afterwards, so if you miss it, you can follow up. And the reason I tell you that, first of all, it's always free. It's not like some scam to get you to subscribe to something. It literally is there, so in case you miss, you can connect with that, and then you can allow it to build. Because the reality is most of our message series do build on each other, and this one specifically really does build on what we're teaching each and every week. And so if you miss a week, if you're not here, you have to work, you're not feeling good, you're on vacation, whatever, you can always jump online and be able to catch up with that. We really encourage you to do that. So for those of you that did miss last week or you allowed a week to actually happen in between, and sometimes you forget, I want to just do a real quick recap. And the basic thing is to understand that the vast majority of people in the United States today are living just like this guy. They're strapped. They are literally tied with their finances and their money, all those different things. They're just tied up to it. They're so strapped. It's interesting, again, as I'm doing this series, I continue to kind of see these little updates that come when it comes to financial stuff. Have you been noticing how often financial updates have been coming the minute we're talking about it? And literally over Labor Day weekend, the Lenders Club of the United States came out with a survey that they did during the month of July. Now, when I started putting this series together a couple months ago, the number of people in the United States living paycheck to paycheck was 55%. After week 1, and I told you this last week if you were here, it actually jumped during July to 60%. Now, the Lenders Club survey just came out in end of September, so it's talking about August, and now that number is to 61%. We are overachieving, folks. It's fantastic. In fact, in that survey, it's really interesting because people tend to think, if I make more money, then that will solve my issues. If I can make more money, then it'll take care of the problems. So what they did is they broke it down by brackets, by what you made. And so if you make $50,000 or less, 78% of people making $50,000 or less said, yes, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. So then, those that are 50 to 100,000, you would go, oh, well, those obviously they're probably fine because if you make that much money, you should probably be good. So those 50 to 100,000, they were 67%. So not much of a difference. And then you go, well, if it's 100,000 plus, which that's a pretty big category, right? 100,000 plus, that's 45% of people that make $100,000 or more say that they're living paycheck to paycheck. Now, isn't that crazy? Now, I know some of you are like, well, I make $700,000 a year. That's fantastic. Let's have a conversation afterwards. But literally, we get this thing in our mind, right, that we believe more money is going to solve our problems. But in reality, what money does, the more money you have, it just makes you more of the same. It doesn't really change who you are. It doesn't change how you spend. If you make more, guess what you do? You spend more. And so it's really not a money problem. That's kind of how we ended last week. It's not a money problem. It's a spiritual problem. We're not believing that God is truly the source of what we have and that God is the one that we need to honor first above all things. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're like, yeah, I'm really getting into this, I'm listening, I'm engaging, I just really want to encourage you kind of put a bow on all this and make sure you're here the last week with the Q&A, and then of course sign up for the More Than Money workshop as well. So just to kind of give you a quick recap, our main verse last week was Proverbs 22:7. In Proverbs 22:7, it says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. And that word servant, if you want to on your notes, you can circle that. That word servant, it literally is the word slave. It's someone you are enslaved to, that person, that individual. And so when God, through King Solomon here, the wisest, wealthiest man that ever lived, writes these words, he says, listen, if you have a debt issue, if you've got significant debt, if you've got debt, you are literally serving, you are a slave to that. And I know nobody really runs around and goes, yes, I'm a slave to my debt. But they say things like, I would love to do X, Y, or Z, but I can't afford to do it because I don't have the money to do it. I would love to have a different job. I would love to have more kids. We'd love to get married, but we just can't afford to do it. We can't do these things. And what they're really saying is we are too strapped to be able to do what we want to do. And so people, the vast majority of people here in our country live literally strapped when it comes to our finances. And then also we looked at a verse where Jesus says this. He says, we can't serve two masters. Now, if you were here last week, I'm just going to give you a test really quickly. Jesus says, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve God and what? Money. Good for you. Some of you are listening. Or you're like, no, I memorized that verse in Awana when I was a kid. But we're like, isn't it amazing that of all the things that Jesus could have chosen, right? He could have said, you can't serve both God and relationship. You can't serve God and power. You can't serve God and influence. You can't serve God and sex. You can't serve God and alcohol. You can't serve God and all that stuff. And he goes, no, money. You cannot serve God and money. It's amazing because it's almost like Jesus, who is God in the flesh, knows us. Almost. I mean, I'm not going to go that far, but it's almost like he knows that is going to be our big issue. That's going to be the thing that competes with us the vast majority of the time. So we looked at last week, for those of us who are Christians, we looked at the biblical principle that we don't serve money. That's not our role. Our role is not to serve money. But if we are in debt, we're actually a slave to that. We're actually a slave to that debt. And we looked at it all sorts of different ways that we are actually serving money and we don't even realize that we're actually doing it. We don't serve money. We serve who? God. Okay, that wasn't as good. We don't serve money. We serve who? God. We don't serve money. We serve God. And money serves us as we serve. That's the way it works. Because money is a perfect employee. It does everything you tell it. But money is a horrific boss. If money's in charge, it's like a toddler planning a play date. You know, it's just awful. So you need to take that toddler of money who has strapped him into the child seat in the back and take the driver's seat back. That's what we have to do if we're going to honor God with what we have. So, now let's go over an old rule today. I'm going to give you an old rule. Now, if you are in your late 60s, early 70s, or further, you've probably heard this rule, even though the vast majority of your life you probably haven't lived by that rule. If you are younger than that, if you're in your 50s or younger, you've probably never heard of this, and I'm going to tell you this rule, and you're going to go, that is the craziest, stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. So just get ready. Go real quickly. Okay, there you go. Now you got it out of the way. Here we go. Here's the rule. If you don't have money to buy it, you don't. What the heck? How crazy is that, right? Would we all agree? Stupid, right? Who came up with that rule? But that is, in fact, for millennia, since the beginning of time until the 1920s, that was the rule. If you didn't have money to pay for it, you didn't buy it. In fact, not only didn't you buy it, you weren't allowed to buy it. There was no such thing as credit. You had to earn the money, and then you had to buy it with hard-earned cash. That's the way that it worked. It's a crazy concept, I know. Now, here's what's wild. Before the Great Depression, before America kind of went into that dive of all that stuff, only 2% of all homes in the United States had a mortgage on them. Let me say that one more time because I know you're like, I think I heard him wrong. Only 2% before the Great Depression had mortgages on their home. Fast forward one generation, 40 years, 1965. And in 1965, only 2% didn't. So in 40 years, we went from only 2% having a mortgage to 98%, and only 2% didn't. That's how quickly it changed. And since that point in time, every generation since then has been like, oh yeah? Here, hold my beer. We can do it worse than you. Yeah! Because every generation has built off of the entitlement of the generation before them. And here's how it goes. No offense to you if you are this age. Take a deep breath. I'm not pointing you out. I'm 23 years old. And you know what? I deserve the same car, the same house, the same clothes, the same shoes that my parents took 40 years building. And you know when I want it? Anyone take a guess when we want it? Now! And it gets better every year. And that is why we are in the mess that we are in as Americans. There are three types of people in the United States today. There's the haves. Everyone knows that. Oh, the 1%. Oh, evil people. The haves, the have-nots, and the have but haven't paid for it. It's not really there. The bank owns it. That is the vast majority of people, isn't it? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand because I think probably 98% of us would go, yeah, that's probably the category I fit into. We have it, but we don't really own it. The bank owns it, and we're making 7,000 monthly payments of $17.99. But we got 2 for 1, so really it was a great deal. And that's where we find ourselves. Now, in the scriptures actually addresses this very plainly and bluntly. And please, when we read this, don't be like, how dare you say that, Dave? This is God. Say that to him. Proverbs 13, verse 7. One man pretends to be rich, yet has what? Nothing. Today, if everything was taken from you that you did not own outright, that wasn't either on a credit card, a student loan, a mortgage, line of credit, what would you have? You see, we unfortunately have fallen into this trap as a society that we need to make it appear like we have more than what we actually have. And we do it because we don't want people to make fun of us, to poke at us. We were talking about it in my small group this last Thursday night, and it was so funny because as guys, right, it's a guys' small group. As guys, one of the things that we struggle with, and guys, those of you that are here, when I tell you this, you can feel free to agree, and you can agree by a grunt if you so choose. But you see this truck, right? And it is like, man, it is a truck. It's chromed out, leather wheels. I mean, listen, the leather inside of this is baby calves that have been massaged in Japanese beer and stretched over, and all they were fed was Gouda cheese their entire life. And it's supple and soft, and it's got these, their mufflers are like this big, and it's got tires as tall as my head, and it drives by you, and you go, oh, I want that truck. And then you see this 5'2" pigtail soccer mom in the driver's seat. Right? You're like, man. And it's for guys, that's what it is. For ladies, I don't know. I'm sure it's something else. But we look at that and we want that and we think to ourselves, that's what I want. And so we think when we get that and we start making the monthly payments, we have arrived. But then what happens is a bigger, faster, prettier truck with lamb skin drives by us, and we're like, oh, I'm not as good as that person. And that is the trap we fall into. And so the vast majority of us run around pretending to be something that we're not. So here's the big idea for today. Stop pretending to be rich and start practicing wealthy habits. Stop pretending to be rich and start practicing wealthy habits. Now, here's what I mean by wealthy. I do not mean that if you start doing this in 90 days, you will be wealthy. We at Friendship have like a thing that we're shooting for. For everyone here that calls Friendship home, we want to grow you to become spiritually deeper, financially stable, and relationally satisfied. That's a full-grown disciple of Jesus Christ. That's what a full-grown disciple of Jesus Christ looks like. And that middle part, financially stable, means that the money that God allows you to have, the wealth, the things that God allows you to have, you manage it well. It doesn't mean that God's going to download into your account. What you're going to pray tonight when you go to bed, dear God, make me a millionaire. And tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, when your alarm goes off, you hear a ding, and it's Chase. It is your Chase banking app. And all of a sudden, you have $1 million. That's what's going to happen. Now, somebody's going to clip that and go, see, Dave, prosperity preacher. No. But that's what we think. But here's the reality. If we are going to be able to handle our finances, the things that God has given us, and by the way, let me just say this really quickly. You don't own anything. God owns it all. You go, what do you mean God owns it all? I work hard for my job. I'm sure you do. You work hard for your job using the brain that God gave you, using the ability that God gave you, using the talents that God gave you, using the resources and the openings that God gave you to be able to get that job. And then every morning when you wake up, God allows you to wake up and have another breath. And God created it all. God created everything when He spoke the words, let there be light. And so everything in this world is where wealth comes from. It is created first by that which we have been given by God. So it's all God's. You are not an owner. You are a steward or a manager of what God has given you. And I know I do not mean this to be like, yeah, people, but one day, if you know Jesus Christ, you will stand before Him and He will ask the question, what did you do with what I gave you? So we are not owners. We are stewards. We are managers of what God has given us. But even in that, we can't just expect things to show up for us. We are to use what we have been given to do what God has called us to do. And so that means we have to actually practice these biblical and financial values in every area of our life. Number one, self-control. Yeah! Wow, coming out swinging. Self-control. Learn to say no. Okay, let's just for a second here, because as a society, we have forgotten how to say no. We've forgotten how to say no to our wants and our desires. We've forgotten how to say no to our kids. We've forgotten how to say no to people asking us to do things, and so our schedule is crazy and chaotic. We've forgotten how to say no to sports teams that say, hey, listen, we would like you to spend $10,000 this summer traveling all over the United States because your kid may be a star. Not really, but we've forgotten how to say no. So here's what we're going to do this morning. You ready? All right. Here's what I want you to do. Everyone take a deep breath. Ready? It's going to feel so good. It's going to feel so good. Ready? You're going to say no. And here's what I want you to do. Before we say no, I want you to think about the thing or the person. Don't look at them or say it in their face. But I want you to think about that, and I want you to then verbalize. We're going to practice saying no. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. No. See, that wasn't hard, was it? Your face did not fall off. Your life did not fall apart. It is one of the smallest words in the English language, but one of the most powerful. And let me just put this kind of in the back of your brain. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Every time you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Because you can't share time. It doesn't work. But every time you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So, self-control is learning to say no for a little while so I can say yes for the rest of my life. It's saying no for a little while so that I can say yes for the rest of my life. Proverbs 25:28. Like a city whose walls are broken down is a man who lacks self-control. Every woman in the room goes, that's right. Men, they're the problem. Well, ladies, I grew up with 3 sisters, no brothers. 2 sisters older than me, 1 sister younger than me. I got married to my beautiful wife. We are approaching 30 years next year. We're very excited about that. Yes, woo! I have 2 daughters. Every dog that's ever been in my house has been a female. Women, you nickel and dime us to death. Can I just say that right now? Oh, it is the extensions, it is the nails, it's the belt because it matches with the purse and you got to get another purse. Why? You've got 17 purses, but I don't have one in this color. Right? Nickel and dime. Now, you may be like, oh, I can't believe you're saying that. That's okay because guys will kill you all at once. Ooh, a new boat. $50,000, right? Ooh, I got a new truck. Right? We do it all at once. Listen, guys don't do half measures. We just jump in with both feet. Whereas ladies, you're like, I'm just going to tip my toe into bankruptcy. But that's the problem. We lack self-control. We as adults are like a little kid that says, I want it and I want it now. We lack self-control. So here's the questions for you. Do you really need that set of nails? Nobody thinks they're real. I promise. I promise. Especially when you put your hand through your hair and the nail pops off in somebody's drink. Oh, it's happened. Guys, do you really need to golf twice a week? Yeah. Everyone laughed at the nails. They're like, oh. Do you really need that $6 cup of Starbucks coffee to live on? And I say that because 5 people in a row came in with Starbucks today. Like, oh, I got to put that in there. And I love Starbucks. Does your 12-year-old really need an iPhone? Oh, right? Yeah. Like, oh, buy them a burner. That way they can't be tracked by the police. Okay, really? Do you really need the brand new car that's going to depreciate 20% every year and 10% when you sign on the dotted line and walk it off the car lot? Get out of debt. Buy a new car every year if you want to. Get your nails done every week. But get it in order and priority with self-control and get out of debt first. You go, but that's hard. And isn't it so great that we have such a wonderful God that in the book of Galatians it says that He gives us the fruit of the Spirit, that if we know Jesus Christ, we are filled with the Spirit, and the Spirit gives us these gifts: love, joy, peace, patience. You know what the next one is? Self-control. God isn't saying, I hope you figure it out. Good luck. He's saying when you rely on the Spirit of God, the Spirit will develop within you self-control. He's already given you the tools. You just need to activate it. Dave Ramsey likes to say, live like no one else now so that you can live like no one else later. So, self-control. Number 2, sacrifice. You're like, man, I'm not liking these S words. Okay. Give up something I love. Give up something I love for something I love even more. Give up something I love for something I love even more. You're like, well, my spouse spends all the money. Can I give them up? No. We're talking about things and items and things that you have pursued. And you know what's amazing? Isn't it wild how we do it all the time, every single time we do this, and it's not a change. We build up the anticipation of when we get this item, right? Whether we ordered it on Amazon and we're like tracking the package, 5 stops away, 4 stops away. And we're so excited when we get it, and there's this pump of adrenaline. And we're like, yes, this feels so good. And 24 hours later, you forget you have it. The dopamine just drops to the floor, and we think to ourselves, well, it wasn't big enough. The next one will be bigger. And we keep falling to this idea that joy is going to last, but it never will, and it never does. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, Jesus Christ is the most wonderful example of sacrifice, giving up something that you love so that you can have something that you love even more. And in Hebrews chapter 12, it says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith, who for the what? The joy set before him endured the cross. Do you know that Scripture records Jesus Christ, the night that he was betrayed, in the Garden of Gethsemane, praying this, Lord, if it is possible, let this pass from me. And yet, in that process, it was, but the cross brings me these people. And I love them even more than I despise the cross. And so I will sacrifice myself to get that which I love even more. That's the key that we have to get when it comes to this area of finances in our life. We have to truly determine that which we love most. Let me give you a couple simple, easy examples. You give up cable television, you're like, and streaming maybe, right? You give up cable television so that you can have a debt-free Christmas. How awesome would it be to watch your kids open presents that you know are already paid for? You're not going, I don't want to go to the mailbox in January. I don't want to open up any email from Visa card. I just don't want to. If I pretend it's not there, it's not there. You stay in a smaller house so that one of you can stay home with the kids. I know, right? Oh, undercutting the American dream right there. But then you achieve something that you love even more. If you're in college, you take 2 roommates or 3 roommates so that you can graduate with no student loans. You give up eating out for lunch and you save $112,000 this year. Okay, that's a joke. But seriously, how much money do we spend? You're like, listen, I only go to fast food restaurants. Listen, I stopped at a fast food restaurant. I got a burger, a small fries, and a small drink. Because now, have you noticed they are not putting all the prices on the menus? Have you noticed that? And I walk up and they're like, that'll be $10.89. I'm like, $10.89? I could go over here and get a steak with water for that. What in the world? That's ridiculous because the prices of everything are just going through the roof. If you think about that, $11 a day, 5 days a week is $55. Every 2 weeks is $210. Every month it's $420. You are spending a car payment, okay, not a great car, but a car payment on eating out at McDonald's. Give up something you love for something you'll love more. If you paid the minimum payment, last week I shared with you that the average credit card debt is $14,517. That's the average credit card payment or credit card bill of the people of the United States. If you paid the minimum payment, which is $217.93, you ready for this? If you paid the minimum payment of $217.93, which is a lot, by the way, for a minimum payment, just FYI, it would take you 40 years to pay off your credit card. 40. Is that right? No. Okay. 40 years. And during that time, your $14,517 would cost you $104,606.40 because you paid the minimum payment. Now, if you invested that $14,517 and let it sit for 40 years, do you know how much money you'd have? Over $1 million. If you invested that $14,517 and then on top of that made every month the monthly payment of $217.93, after 40 years, you would have over $3.5 million. Or after 40 years, you could have paid off your debt of $14,517. You see, it's choices. You give up something you love for something you love even more. So self-control, sacrifice, last one, planning. Oh, let me hear all my planners today. Yes, all my planners are married to free spenders. Planning. Not planning got me into this mess. And planning will get me out. Not planning got me into this mess. And planning will get me out. Luke 14:28. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to actually complete it? What a crazy thought. To actually stop, look at your finances and go, can we actually afford this? And by the way, when you ask the question, can I afford it? You're not saying, how much is the monthly payment? You're not saying, well, how much is the interest and how, over time, how long can I pay for that? You're asking, what is the real cost? Because remember, self-control, sacrifice, what am I giving up to actually make this payment? What's the real cost? What's the real cost? Proverbs 21, verse 5, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as sure as haste leads to what? Do not make any financial decisions quickly. Can I say that one more time? Do not make any financial decisions quickly, because almost every time a fast financial decision is a bad financial decision. Because fast financial decisions are not made with this. What are they made with? This. Oh, I love that puppy. That's $7,000 that's going to chew up my couch that I paid $8,000 for, or literally I put on the credit card and I'm making payments of $244 a month. We make it with this. And I got to tell you this, and I know it sounds like a country song, but your heart lies. It lies to you. It just does. So do not make hasty financial decisions. Okay, you may have wandered into debt, but you will never wander out. It's not going to happen. So I'm going to give you three things. A three-part plan, okay? Number one, I'm going to use a swear word. Just cover your ears, cover your children's ears. You ready? Create a budget. I know, right? Like it's not 4 letters, but it's worse, I think. Create a budget. Do you know what a budget is? A budget is you sitting your toddler of money down and going, this is what you're going to do. That's all a budget is. A budget is just telling your money where it's going to go and where it's not going to go. And if it doesn't go there, you discipline it. And you put it in the right place, in the right time, in the right category, and you don't vary from that. You don't wander from that. You stay on that plan. You budget. If you come, on Sunday night, October 1st, we'll walk you through how to create a budget that works for you. Promise you, you'll be able to do it. Number 2, a $1,000 emergency fund. You're like, what? Why do we need a $1,000 emergency fund? We've got credit cards. That's why you need a $1,000 emergency fund. Because guess what? Life happens. Any of you ever had a furnace go out in the middle of winter? Anybody? I've had it. Okay, cool. Any of you had your water go out in the middle of summer when it's 1,000 degrees? Okay, fantastic. Any of you had, your car die on a highway and leave you stranded? Wow, Crystal, wow, you have all the trifecta. She wins. Okay, wow. Wow. It's terrible, isn't it? Because life is going to happen. And so you set that aside, and when you dip into that, you pay that back, so you always have that. Now this last one, okay? This last one is the debt snowball. Now I know if you listen to Dave Ramsey at all, you've probably heard it, but we thought about how could we illustrate this to you, because quite frankly, this is one of the most powerful tools. I'm going to take that back. This is the most powerful financial tool. and I cannot oversell this. I have, as you'll hear me say in just a little bit, I've been teaching this for over 25 years. And it wasn't new with me. It's not new with Dave Ramsey. It's been around for forever. But I want you to see the power of this and how it can change your life. And so we put it on video so you can actually see the numbers and everything. And so we're going to go ahead and roll that right now. Okay, for this part, I thought we'd do a video ahead of time so that you can actually see everything that I'm talking about in real time. But if I brought this guy with me on stage, no one would be able to see it. So here's what we're talking about. We're talking about that third part of that plan, and that is the debt snowball. It's something that's been around for a long time. Dave Ramsey uses it, but it's not really, copyrighted by him. I heard about it about 25 years ago, and we actually used it in our finances then, and we've shared it with many, many people, including my own parents, at that point in time using that too. And it's been such an incredible tool in helping people get out of debt. It's an amazingly powerful thing that, quite frankly, if you learn it, if you put it to practice in your life, it will not only change your life, it'll change generations in your family to come. So here's what the debt snowball is. First of all, let's look at what we have here on our poster to walk through. It's kind of like your budget. It's all the debt that you have accrued up to this point in time. First of all, you owe Lowe's because, quite frankly, you have a lot of tools that you like. You've got Target and all the different things that you've bought at Target. Target is kind of the bougie Menards. You can buy toilet paper, you can buy mouthwash, you can buy clothes, and you can buy deodorant, all there at Target. And I know a lot of you love Target. And then you've got your parents. Maybe you borrowed from your parents $1,600 to be able to do something. Your HVAC went out. Your car had a big major problem. And they're very gracious to you. They're not going to charge you any interest, but they want to be paid as well. Then you've got your Visa card for just normal stuff that you've paid, your car, and then of course the wonderful thing that everybody talks about, your student loan. Now here's what we're going to do. As you create your budget, you're going to find $200. I know that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? $200. You say, where am I going to find $200 in my budget? Well, lunches, lattes, and loose change. That's all that matters. You just find $200 somewhere. And seriously, if you stop drinking expensive coffee, if you stop going out to lunch, if you just start hanging on to stuff instead of just getting rid of it, so small things, nickel and diming it, you'll probably find $200. On top of that, if you're like, well, maybe I can't do that, we've narrowed everything down, then maybe get a second job or something short term to be able to just get an extra $200. Take an extra overtime shift or two to be able to get that extra $200, because that extra $200 that you're going to find or infuse into your budget is going to be the key to changing everything that we're going to do here in just a moment. So first of all, I want you to notice how we have these set up. Now, if you look in the center, you see here all these percentages, right? And people would go, well, you want to push the high percentages to the top. You want to do this, you want to do that. That's math. If you and I were good at math, we wouldn't be in debt $23,500. So we're not going to worry about that. We're going to focus on the smallest amount first. The smallest debt that we have is to Lowe's for all those wonderful tools that we needed to have, and it's for $450. Now Lowe's has a minimum payment of $50, but we have our Snowball Accelerator right here. And it's going to go right into this column right here. So you're going to add $200 to your payment, which means your new payment is $250. And in just 2 short months, guess what? Lowe's is paid off. And then here is how, and here is where the magic starts. You take that $250, and now your snowball isn't $200. It's $250. And I know that marker's really loud, isn't it? And so now your new payment is $280. And again, in just a couple of short months, now you have both Target and Lowe's paid off, and you've done it in 5 months. You've paid that off, and then you take that $280 and you put it in here to pay your parents off. And you add that to the $200, and now you're paying a new payment of $480 a month. And again, in about 4 months, your parents are paid off. They're really happy because now you don't owe them anymore. But that doesn't stop. It doesn't stop there. It keeps going. So that $480 comes down to here. And now your new payment to your Visa is $510. And again, let's see, that's $518. That's about 4 months as well. You get that paid off. Now your parents are paid off, the Visa's paid off, and then you get to the car payment. And again, $510 plus $400. Now your new payment, or excuse me, $510 goes here, and your new payment is $910. And you're going to pay that off, and then you're going to do the same thing. And now your $910 comes down here, and now you're paying $1,110 on your student loan. Now, here's the cool part. If you would make just the minimum payments for all these things, it would take you ready for this? It would take you 120 months to pay that off. Do you realize 120 months is 10 years? 10 years to pay off $23,500. Doing this, you pay it off not in 120 months, but in 21 months. You pay all that off in 21 months, and you know what you find at the end of that? You find an extra $1,110 has now shown up in your budget. And you can begin to invest that $1,110 in index funds or whatever. You know, the stock market averages between 8 and 10%. So let's say you take that $1,110, and for the extra 99 months, right, between these two, 99 months, you invest that $1,110. You know, at the end of that same time period where now you've just paid off $23,500 over a 10-year period, at the end you wouldn't be at zero because now you've paid everything off. At the end, you'd be a positive $153,000, and let me make sure I get my number correctly, $153,992.30. That is the power of the debt snowball. Now I want you to think about it this way. In about 21 months, you pay off $23,500. You also increase your budget expenses or abilities to expend by $1,110. You invest that money and you get $153,990.30. And you never get back into debt again. You see, that's the power of getting your finances under control. That's the power of paying off your debt. That's the power of the snowball. Okay, so as we close this morning, I just want to remind you what we've talked about. We don't serve money. We serve God. And as we serve God, money serves us. We need to stop pretending that we're rich. And we need to start practicing wealthy habits. Because if you start putting God's principles into your finances and you keep God as the priority of your life, it can take even the worst financial situation and turn it around for His glory and for your benefit. Would you pray with me? Father God, we thank you so much. We thank you so much for the principles. And you know, God, sometimes we think, oh, well, that's math, that's accounting. Well, God, you created that. You created numbers. You created the accounting ideas. You created the things that give us the ability to count. And so we know that comes from you. as well. But God, we also are thankful because you give us all these things, that we are stewards and managers of what you have given us. And God, I pray that we would get out of the trap that so many of us have been in. And God, I'm guilty of it. I don't even pretend to think I've got it all together. It's so hard sometimes to see what somebody else has and not go, well, I want that too. Why did they get that? Why shouldn't I get that? And God, it's just faulty thinking. And God, we know and we believe that you are the God of the universe and you own all things, that God, we stand before you and we are humble before you and we go, you've given us this, so we want to manage it well. And that God, if you've given us a purpose and a calling and we manage those things well, we will have everything we need to be able to fulfill the purpose and the calling that you have for us. So God, I pray that today, as we leave this place, we will commit to ourselves to putting these habits into place. The habit of self-control, the habit of sacrifice, and the habit of planning, so that God, we honor you with all that you've given to us. And you would look to us and you would look at us at the end of our lives as we stand before you, and you would say, well done, my good and faithful servant. We thank you for that. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.